Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of AusTableTalk. My name is Luke and I'm here at the table with Kristen, Emerson and Steve.
Hello.
Evening. Have you guys been?
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Very good.
I had 2 weeks off of work and went back to work today, and it was great to be back, to be honest.
Notice the hand if you're watching
hand.
video.
I know there's nothing on the hand.
The hand is naked,
Yes.
finally.
Naked.
Yes.
But it has a tan line.
Yeah, it does too. So it's feeling stronger.
No, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
On the way.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, in this new format where we've got multiple segments, what we have observed in the last couple is that when we get into the main topic and we have some, open the word, have some study, when we get to the end of that, it often feels like this is the appropriate place to can it, not to go on and talk about something else. So we're going to do that. And so we're going to rearrange
all the other sections of the segment are more of a goofy sort of joke around type of thing.
Yeah, it's more
and
just...
if we want to end on like a solid
something to take home
heavy
and
note
chew
or
on.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
If by the grace of God we can end it on a solid heavy note.
Yes, exactly. So therefore, the community engagement section, we're going to be moving that up to the top, which is now. So I was sent a reel today by Matt Libke. Matt, looking forward to seeing you next week. But he sent a reel, and I thought that would be perfect for us to share on the show and have a quick chat about. So let's play that, Cody.
Out of all the religions in the world, which one do you think is most likely to be true? Answer in one word only, please.
Christianity.
And why do you say that?
Based on historical evidence, fulfilled prophecies, and the life and resurrection of Jesus.
Any other reasons?
The consistency and coherence of its teachings, and the transformative impact on individuals' lives.
Thank you so much. ChatGPT.
All right. Now, I have experienced this phenomenon myself in the not too distant past, and I have drawn some conclusions about it. But before I draw my conclusions, I'm curious. What's your initial take on that?
I saw James's post the other day.
Yeah, that kind of triggered me look into it a bit more deeply. So yeah, go. What did you? James is a friend of ours.
Friend of the podcast.
Friend of the podcast. What do you? Huh?
Huh?
Did you just like
No, I was like, that was an agreement.
That was an I thought it was like an like,
No,
that's a pity.
no.
I'm like, you want him to not be our friend? Okay.
We love you, James.
We love you, James.
Friend of the podcast.
So he posted on there and asked everybody to ask ChatGPT what was the correct Christian denomination, or how, I can't remember how he articulated it.
Yeah.
And a number of people did it, and not everybody, but most people, the response came back as Seventh-day Adventist. I tried it. It also came back and said Seventh-day Adventist.
Nice.
Hey, ChatGPT.
Yeah. Try it now.
See, this AI ain't silly, No.
What should I ask?
It's pretty clever.
How should I
But
phrase it?
from that video,
What Christian denomination
sorry.
is most likely to be accurate? Most likely to be accurate or most accurate?
Most likely will do.
Okay.
Hold it to the mic.
Here we go. Oh, it doesn't.
it's not going to read it out loud.
No, not really.
Oh, it's a scam.
Ah.
He just voiced the text.
Oh,
that.
it says that's
You
a
gotta
big
pay.
question, and it depends on what you mean by accurate. Do you mean doctrinal accuracy based on biblical interpretation, historical continuity, alignment with early Christianity? And then it just lists a bunch.
Okay, so you have to word it correctly to get it to say Seventh-day Adventist.
Or prime it.
Well, what I noticed amongst all of the responses that were posted on James's post is that for the people who I know their background, it just said whatever their background was.
Yeah.
And so, in other words, ChatGPT, they've asked enough questions of ChatGPT with their account for ChatGPT to go, this person is a Anglican, Baptist, Seventh-day Adventist, Catholic, whatever. And so it gives you the answer that it thinks you want to hear. And I mean, it would be much cooler to think that it was actually validating what you believe. But
Well, I'll have to get some. We'll have to ask some Catholics and Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff to do it. See
Well,
what
on
it
the
comes
comments,
You know,
there were a few
Catholic.
Catholics.
yes,
Yeah.
J-dubs.
I got two thoughts about it. One is who cares? As in,
we could have started there.
yeah. As in,
End of podcast.
Yeah. I don't know. Not to be poo-hooing AI, but
Yep.
who cares what AI thinks? because if it disagrees with you, you're going to write it off anyway. And if it agrees with you, then you hold it up as the Holy Grail. So it's kind of like,
That's
well,
a very, very good point.
like, who
That's a
cares?
very good point.
Yes, yes.
And the other thought was, actually, I was telling Luke I started listening to We Who Wrestle with God by Jordan Peterson, his new book. And in the first chapter, he talks a little bit about large language models and how they use statistics to basically put the next most likely word in. So if you've been asking it about religion, or you prime it, like you guys are saying, with religious like pretext, it's going to go, well, based statistically on, you know, the world being 50% Christian, it'll just load. And then you ask a follow-up question. It goes, well, clearly we're talking about Christianity, so then the truths that it upholds are the death and resurrection of Jesus, the consistency, the transformation of lives. So it's just going to go, well, these are all the things that are talked about in relation to this.
Yeah.
So
And
that's what I'm going to feed you.
Yeah.
Instead of like looking at the big scope, it like looks at, oh, you're interested in this section.
Well, it doesn't know what truth
Yeah.
is. It doesn't have a...
But I think there's a much more, and the reason I put it here, I think there's a much more interesting meta narrative that's going behind that, and that is these.
It is biased to some degree.
Oh yeah, for sure. But the thing that I think is interesting is that how much confirmation bias can you expect in your life, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, this is. It doesn't. The fact that we are feeding so much information into these large language models, and they're associating and connecting that with us as an individual, that means that these models are going to be
It's a
able.
worse echo chamber.
Yeah, it's the worst echo chamber because it's only you in it, and it has the ability to. And I'm not saying there are nefarious purposes with the current large language models that are out there, but as it becomes more and more embedded into our culture, if you've got a bad actor that is, very good with psychology, for example, you can mess with a lot of people's heads by, feeding them a AI that is optimized to get certain results or change certain viewpoints. Or
Well, I know it's
Yeah.
completely off topic, but listening to some of Joe Rogan's latest interviews have been talking about the psyops or the alleged psyops that the particularly USAID have been critical in implementing around the world, and coups and things like that. So imagine if you had a tool that was not just a LGBT rally. It's it can directly talk to everyone. Yay! It's so much easier for them then.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I this morning, unrelated to this morning, I asked ChatGPT that question of, what do you know about me? And
Yeah.
it fed back a really interesting thing, and like.
Your kids,
Yeah,
Dave.
I was going to say, not necessarily going to go into all the bits and pieces, but what it fed back was a conglomeration of all the things that I've asked it about. And not all of those things are actually me. Often my kids will be trying to get information about how fast sharks can swim or whatever it is. And so, like, that's one of the things that it said. Yeah, you love sharks and reptiles. I'm like, well,
Nerd.
I have more affinity for them than I do any other animal, but it's like I know quite a bit about your interests and what you're working on. You enjoy playing darts with friends. Seth has been into darts, and I don't know, he must have been asking it something about darts. You love sharks and reptiles and prefer plant-based meals. That is me. That is true. Without capsicum, that is not true.
That's Rachel.
Yeah, that's Rachel. That's right. My sister-in-law.
Capsicum is disgusting.
Capsicum is fantastic.
Capsicum is disgusting.
Especially when cooked. You are
Start
running
my
a
own
company
psyop.
called Blue Vineyard. You're running a company called Blue Vineyard. Yeah, that creates digital tools for Adventist organizations. Yeah. Then you're also pursuing your PhD.
Where's that going?
That's Dave.
Is that Dave?
Yeah, that's Dave. That's
it's
right.
Dave.
Focused on systematically ending homelessness, which you will need to do some crowdfunding for. You have a podcast with a group of friends where you discuss conversations. You covered topics like obedience in the Old Testament and the Christian perspective on aliens. You're also in the process of planting a church. I am not in the process of planting a church, but I have probably brainstormed about church planting. Anyway, but you guys get the idea.
Yep.
It's a
Yeah.
mixture. And
Yep.
so it has this sense of who I am. And so it's going to feed me biased results. And now I know that. I'm like, oh, well, that's really interesting. I actually don't
Hit
want
your
it to do
skeptic
that.
button.
Yes, skeptic button. So anyway, that's a long way around.
I
but
bought
that was-
into it so quickly, hey.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
dangerous. I need to be more careful.
Yeah. You buy into what? The skepticism or the...
No, I just believe the crazy stuff that I hear so easily.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, This AI is a genius. It knows that Seventh-day Adventism is right. Just bought straight into it anyway.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Oh.
That's true.
Cool. Well, anyway, the other thing that I had to share here in the community section is a message from Ruth. And before we play that, I just want to give a little bit of context, because one of the things that we are coming back to, a recurring theme, is that we would love you guys, the Table Tribe, to be having experiences like we have. That, you know, having a small group of friends that you can spiritually journey together with, build that community, and that's been so powerful in our lives, and that's what we want to see happening in more and more places. And the dream that we have is that you who do that would send us a message and tell us that you do that, and what you enjoy about that. And I know Ruth is one of our community. She's on our Discord server actually, and she volunteered to share some of her experience with her small group. So let's play that.
Ooh.
Hi there. I am part of a small group that meets on Wednesday nights. It is made up of 5 different families, and there are parents and adults and kids of varying ages. And we get together and have dinner, and then we dive into God's Word. I think one of the most encouraging things about the small group that we're part of is that it's made up of families, and the kids are actually really involved. They take turns reading the scripture. They're always jumping in for things to pray over or praises that they have. And as a mom of a 6-year-old, like, it is so encouraging to have my son around other kids who are diving into God's Word and who just really love and encourage each other. It's been a really amazing small group for us. Like, we also get the ability to just like speak love and life over the other couples in our group, and they do the same for us whenever we're struggling or going through things. And it's also just been a really great experience as far as like practical things. Like, we go to the kids' football games, and they support, you know, stuff that we do. And so, like, it's just been a really good thing. It's a beautiful way to just live together as a body of Christ, and to just live out what we're called to do. So,
Ooh. Thanks, Ruth.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, thanks,
Nice.
Ruth. That's really cool. I love hearing how many like aspects of life their group touches. Like, it's not just that like equally defined. You know, this is the conversation we have where we look at the Bible. It's like all of life, and I think that's where it needs to be.
And
That's
getting the
awesome.
kids passionate, that's very, very encouraging
Yeah.
to hear
Yes, love that.
stuff like that
Yeah.
happening.
Mm. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
the last thing that I have on the list just before we jump into the topic at hand, this is from my son. This is the question that he wanted to leave with us.
The second question.
The second question.
this
That's
question.
right. We dropped this off last week, so let's play Seth's second question that we pushed off to this week.
Okay, you might not have that one.
Why do people actually want to worship Satan?
So there are people that act, and it's true. There are people who proactively choose to do that, right? Like, it's
I had a friend, they were telling me, oh yeah, I was looking into Satanism, and I'm like, yo, what?
wow.
Yeah, it was wild because they came from a, what's it called? Not Hindu, a Muslim background.
Okay.
And I was like, they were like, oh yeah, I wanted to like, I emailed the church, like the Satanist church the other day.
Wow.
They were telling me like about the 2 types of Satanists, 3 types of Satanist church. I'm like, dang. And then that led to a big discussion on like religion and like what that meant to them. But yeah.
I think Satan gets a lot of his church members for his Satan church, just out of curious people who are in a dark place, and just nudging them and urging them and
Yeah.
tempting them into that place, and then promising things, you know, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've listened to a bit of history, and fact checks welcome, specifically on the Satanic Church. And when it started, it was just a dude who was pretty much just like, I don't know if it's anti-Christian is the right word, but he's pretty much just like, I want a social club, but I don't want to go to church.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
pretty
He
much just
started a church.
so he made literally like anti-church, like it's anti-Christianity. So the guy who started it, and he did have some funny ideas, but it wasn't like about worshipping Satan at the beginning. Like I'm sure there was elements of that, and the influence was coming from that side, but it wasn't initially just this overt anti-God. It was just more social club that but then it's just kind of devolved, and obviously there's different, tiers.
Because that's what my friend was saying. There's like different kinds. There's like the proper we worship Satan group, and then there's the other like we reject religion and what that represents.
We mock it.
We hang out on Sunday.
And then there's the
yeah. But to get back to your question,
seance,
Seth,
levitation type crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it promises promises things.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, right?
It does promise things.
It generally it promises things that appeal to humanity, to broken humanity.
Selfish people.
Yeah, selfish
Yep.
people. The need,
All of us.
the desire
All
for
of us.
power, right?
Yeah.
So, if you connect yourself to this, then you have an unfair advantage in the world around you. Whereas what God is promising is the actual fulfillment that you want, but to the unbroken soul, it's like, well, why wouldn't I want, money, fame, power, over whatever life is throwing around me, without the what's the word I'm looking for? Requirements, restrictions, perceived restrictions of Christianity.
Yeah.
What they don't see though is that there's chains that are far bigger than any kind of restriction that you could even loosely infer in the Christian
Read
true
the
Christian
fine
church.
print.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
So
in
people
the
get sucked
name.
in. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys for the input on that question.
Thanks for your question, Seth.
Yeah, last week after the
them
last one
coming.
came out, he's like, "You didn't answer my other question." I'm like, "Next week."
Ripped off.
Next week.
One
Have to
at a
ask
time.
another one, buddy.
Yeah.
1 + 1.
Cool. Well, the topic that we have for today, this Emerson, you're the one that suggested this series, so I'm going to let you
It's
explain.
a series.
Yeah, so
Exciting.
I thought it'd be fun because we did an episode. Actually, the first episode that I recorded with you guys, which I loved, was on obedience, and I thought it would be fun to just pick a what would you call it? Like obedience is like a fruit of the spirit,
theme?
like
Oh,
a
yeah.
theme, or just like. So I'm like, oh well, it would be fun if we just went through all the fruits of the spirit, episode by episode, breaking them down heavily.
Because often when you do fruits of the spirit, you just do fruits of the spirit, right? And you
That's
just
right.
you
do
blast
all
through
of
them.
Yeah, but you don't do a deep dive into each individual one.
Yes.
And I think it's going to be love covers all of them. So we're talking about love today, but I think love is the fruit of the spirit.
intro,
Like
yeah.
it really is the only fruit of the spirit, and all of the other fruits fall under love.
The greatest of these.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like even when you're reading in 2 Corinthians 13.
Yep.
Yeah.
It says like love is gentle, kind,
First, yeah.
patient, blah blah, and so it starts saying that love is, and it lists a bunch of the fruits of the spirit. Like like
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that love is one of the fruits of the spirit. I would say that it probably is the only one, and all of the other ones fall under it.
Yeah. I like that idea of
Cool
nesting.
take.
Yeah.
Yeah. Russian dolls.
So I feel like if we're gonna do love this week, it's probably going to be a bit of an overview of everything to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's, and I would agree with that. As I've been thinking about it, I think there's some unique ways that we can approach this particular topic, because we talk about love generally, right? Like, I mean, that's something we talk about, the love of God, and that it's so important to our Christian experience, all the rest of it. But I think we have, what's the right word here? I think we are victims of language, in the sense that we have love. Yeah, love is a
The
word.
English language.
Of the English
Yeah.
language. Well, I think it happens
That's
to all
right.
languages, but all words, their only utility is in the fact that you understand
Yeah.
it and I
Yeah.
understand it, and we agree
They
on what that
describe
word
concepts,
means.
yeah.
That's right. They describe concepts. And so the fact that there is a concept that we label love, the problem is, over time, these words can get used in different ways. Like, I mean, I don't know what it was like, but I imagine when the word love was coined, people weren't using it to describe their relationship with a taco, right?
Yeah.
It,
Dang, I love tacos.
yeah.
It's 1 Corinthians 13. I said second. I correct that.
No, all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so my meaning by what I'm meaning by that is, when somebody says love, or God is love, or we should
Yeah.
be loving, what
Define it.
Yeah, how do we define that? Because what does that mean now as opposed to what it meant when it was translated or whatever that might be? So
100%.
yeah, I think there's some fun places for us to go. But maybe for a good place for us to start would be in Galatians 5, where the fruits of the Spirit are. So
Yep.
Spirit.
Galatians chapter 5,
Yeah.
22 and 23.
You want to read it for us?
Sounds good. Galatians 5, verse 22 and 23. But the Spirit produces love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, humility, and self-control. There is no law against such as these.
Mm.
I have the Good News edition. Not used to that.
Heresy.
Apologies. Yep.
I think it's interesting that this particular passage is found in Galatians.
Yeah, with the whole law debate.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Paul is addressing some really serious problems that are in the church in Galatia, and he's talking about the legalism that's creeping back into the church, that the Judaizers are bringing back in. Talking about the need for circumcision and all of that. And he goes through this section where he talks about love being the fulfillment of the law. Well, he talks about Christian liberty, faith working through love fulfilling the law, what it means to walk in the Spirit. And then, like, as he gets through to the end of that passage, he launches there into, but the fruit of the Spirit. So, the result of being in the Spirit or having the Spirit in you is this. Love, joy, peace, long suffering, and from what you were saying earlier, Emerson, but the fruit of the Spirit is love. I think that's the way it reads, right? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long suffering, kindness, right? So it's that's
are a result of love.
parenthetical, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And the law is the law of love, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Naturally.
And like the Ten Commandments, everyone, like, it's classic that people say, like, the first 4 are love of God, and then the last 6 are the love of each other. But I feel like it's like God breaks down, like, the importance of love through the Ten Commandments, as in the first 4 are about loving God, and then it's about loving family, and then it's about loving each other, and then the very last one is about love of things, right? And so he breaks down the order of how important things it should be. You got number 1, love God. Number 2, you love your family. Number 3, you love each other, others. And then the last thing that you should be worried about loving is things. And he's actually saying, like, don't love other people's things.
I have never heard that categorization. I've heard this is like love to God and this is love to your fellow man.
Yeah.
I've heard that, but I have not heard it broken down that way. I really
cool.
like that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Really like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really is the law of love, and it covers all the types of love. But I feel like, what do you guys think? Like, what people who aren't in the church, people who haven't read the Bible, they hear love. What do they think about?
I googled it.
What do people? What is love?
Okay. What is love?
Don't hurt me. This is what people think, right?
No. Yeah. An intense feeling of deep affection. Yeah, like, to define love, are we talking about? Because I hear people
the
like,
world.
yeah.
Sorry, this is the point that I'm trying to get at. Is the world conflates love with romance and with infatuation, right? And it takes those two things, Like, people think love, they think, Romeo and Juliet, or The Notebook, or the Shah in India who built the Taj Mahal for his dead wife, like these romantic stories that we know. But, like, I guess my question is, like, how is love portrayed in the Bible differently
Accurately
to how the world sees what love is?
I'd say 2 things about that. One is that the Bible, we flatten the word love, right? We flatten it all into a single word, whereas the Bible does not do that. The Bible has multiple words for love. In the Old Testament, there's a number of words used. I'm only really familiar with Hesed, which is the one that's used most often in relation to God's love. But in Greek, in the New Testament, there's agape, phileo, eros, and storge. So, like,
4 loves.
There's the 4 loves, right? And so they give different aspects of that, of that love. And because English is doesn't do a great job of differentiating, then yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that we especially end up with that idea of what you were saying, where it's condensed into this idea of it being that infatuation sort
Craving,
of sort of experience.
lust.
Yeah. But I think if we're looking for a definition, though, God, because the Bible says, 1 John 4 verse 8, that God is love. And so if we want to know what love is, then...
So it shouldn't be what is love, it should be who is love.
Yeah, true. But so if you were just... If we make God the definition of love, then...
Yep.
What does that mean? Like in practice, where do we...
And then you make love the definition of God. Right?
But isn't that making God in our own image then? Because then we're relying on how we've defined love in order to define God.
But we're not love, so hang on, what?
So you said then like love defines God, or love...
I was just saying you could flip it the other way. Like,
because it's a grammatical
say
equivalence.
What is love? God is love.
Yeah.
And then who is God?
Yeah.
God is love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not something you can answer.
Yeah.
Like, you got to read the whole Bible.
Yeah.
It's a really tricky
And to
thing.
know God.
Yes.
Yeah. You can't just,
Mm-hmm.
limited by language. Dang it.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, that is good.
I think that's why so many people that speak different languages, like natively speak different languages, have a different understanding or a different feel for how God relates to them.
Okay, so if God is... Here's another question for you.
Yeah.
If God is love, then where do people get hung up and they think that he's not? Like, what is it that makes people think that God isn't love? Like, I don't know. I feel like maybe they...
Well, the perceived passive acceptance of bad things.
Sorry, that was a really deep thing to say.
Yeah, sorry, we just had a little audio mishap. That's all good. Go on, Steve. Sorry.
I was just saying, because society has the catchphrase of all atheists, like, why can God let children get cancer? Like, he can't be a good God. So,
Yeah. So the whole theodicy question.
So yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you can't be loved because my son
He did
died,
bad things.
I feel like it's not what's it called? It's not like a lack of good definition. It's like a lack of perspective, because he doesn't want that to happen, obviously.
Yeah.
So they've got a right idea. Like, love wouldn't allow that to happen, but in the bigger scheme of things, it really isn't happening.
Yeah.
'Cause there's
I like that.
I think people
problem.
start with a perceived idea of God's bad, or maybe he's not real at all, and then they think about it and they think, well, if he's love and bad things happen, then therefore he's not love. But they haven't. I just feel like they haven't thought it through, But then I said this to a guy that I worked with one time. He's like, no, God can't be love because of all the terrible things that happen. I'm like, well, you obviously haven't thought it through very well. And he's like, I've thought it through very well. I've been thinking about it my whole life. And I said to him, but if God is love, then he had to create us with free will. If he didn't create us with the option of rebelling against him, then that would actually prove that he isn't love. So the fact that we're in a suffering place proves that the creator of us had to be a loving creator. Because no creator would create something to suffer unless he was just evil. But a creator would create something to not suffer, then it would have to remove free will. And therefore that creator wouldn't be love.
Yeah. And if he was as diabolical as all that, why create so much beauty and blessing?
That's right.
So it doesn't make sense.
Why not just have us burning?
Yeah, why not have suffering be the only option?
The only thing.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's right. If that's what he
why
got
have
off
the
on.
option for happiness? Why have joy? Because there is joy in the world.
Yeah.
It's all around
There's a
us.
lot of suffering too, yes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't obliterate it.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's really good reasoning.
So, I just haven't thought it through. And I think that they also have a misunderstanding of what justice is. Because I feel like God's justice in the Bible, you go, God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, so therefore he is either not just or he is not love. And it's just a misunderstanding of of justice.
And what was being accomplished. I was
Yeah.
talking to Ari, and if you're listening to this, Ari, hi.
Hi, Ari.
Ari is a friend of mine that I've been chatting to. I actually met him on a TikTok live, believe it or not.
Nice.
But he was reading. He had read the story of the flood, and we were chatting about that. And he said, "Oh, this just shows God's mercy." And I was like, "That's beautiful." What led you to say that? Because most people don't view the flood that way, and his. I just found it really interesting that coming with fresh eyes, that's how he read it, that's how he perceived it, and so many people see that and go, "Oh, God destroyed all these people," but as Ari pointed out, like they were bad people, they were doing like horrible things to each other, and like God was acting justly in that scenario. It was for the best, you know. And I just love the fact that sometimes it is that simple. You know, like we can afford to trust God. Just because something is just because justice is being done doesn't mean love is not present.
That's right.
Right. One of the questions that I guess I was thinking on when I was thinking about love is like, does love, when love moves from feeling into action, right? Because I mean, we think of love as the feeling. You read it, right? That was in the definition in Google.
Yeah,
like love is a feeling of deep affection or whatever it was. When love progresses from feeling to action, what does that look like? And is it always attached to a positive emotion? Like, is it always going to make people happy if they are the recipient of love? That's a question.
It should be. In God's perfect world, yes.
But in reality?
Well, in reality, like there's broken people, and when people get shown love, it makes them angry, or it makes them because they feel like maybe they don't deserve it, and they don't know how to react, so then they get angry, or they get upset.
You've got kids.
Yeah.
Are they always happy when they are the recipient of your loving actions?
No, I wish they were.
Yeah, me too. But how true is that though? Because right now, one of my kids is he really does not like anything that he has to do right now, right? And so like anytime that this is a constraint and like this has to happen, like, and they're really good things for him, but he does not perceive them to be really good things. And I've had this conversation a very, very significant number of times that, this is an expectation and this is what you're going to do because I love you. I know this is an uncomfortable situation right now because you're upset about it and you don't want to do it, but this is because I love you and I want you to have a good life, and the skills that you learn by going through this experience are what is going to be best for you. And so that's why we're going through this. That's why it's important. And, he will often tell me very clearly that he doesn't care about the effect it has on his long-term success. But
Do it that well.
yeah, that's
Satan
right.
worship, eh?
Yeah. So I'm like, you know what? I'm like, yeah. Well, for now, that's not actually your choice. And so when it's your choice, then we can talk. Then let's revisit. But right now, it's not because
Kids
I love
can't
you.
think far into the
That's
future.
right. They can't think far into the future.
Yeah.
And so if we feel that way about our children, then isn't it totally reasonable to think that God understands things about our lives that we don't? Yeah. Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I turned.
It just reminded me of a story because we're sort of building a bit of a house at the moment, and I'm like up on the ladder holding a big sheet of colorbond, and like I'm a bit unsteady, and my eldest daughter walks underneath,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Go inside, get out, go inside now," and she stands out, "Why?" and starts dawdling, and I don't have time to explain it, so I yell, "Get inside right now!" And so she goes inside and she starts crying, and I put the thing on top of the roof, right?
Yep.
But it was the only thing that you could really
You didn't
do.
have another option
I didn't
at
have
the time.
another option. I had to yell. I had to snap her, out of this state of, I don't understand why you're asking me to do this thing,
Yeah.
so I'm just going to stand here,
under this precarious piece of metal.
Yeah. And I think that happens with us a lot with God as well, where he loves us, so he's trying to snap us out of it, but all we see is, he's just being mean and angry,
Mhm.
you know, and we just don't really understand.
It's a reality check.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly right.
Mhm.
And because the only reason I yelled was because I loved my daughter so much and I don't want her to get hurt.
Yeah.
You know, if I didn't care about her at all, whatever, you hang out down there, and if this slips out, and
Yeah.
you know,
So what? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I turned this passage up before because we were talking about how who God is the definition of love, right? Exodus chapter 34, verse 5. Now, and this is, by the way, this is when Moses goes up onto the mountain and makes new tablets. Verse 5. Now the Lord descended in a cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name of the Lord. And in Scripture, name is often synonymous with character, right? Like this is all that God is about. This is His character. And the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abounding in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands and forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. So Moses made haste and bowed his head toward the earth and worshipped. So
he declared his love and then he declared his justice.
yeah, both.
So who am I? I'm love and I'm justice. And that's what I love doing. I love doing this thing in 1 Corinthians 13, in that classic passage where it says love is good, but you just take the word love and you replace it with God,
Yeah,
and you get almost the same thing.
yeah,
So I mean, in verse 4, it says love suffers long and is kind, but I'm just going to replace the word love with God. So we'll say God suffers long and is kind. God does not envy. God does not parade himself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek his own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Right? And so you can take the word love and replace it with God and you get the exact same sentence. Right?
Yep.
But can you do it with your own name? You know?
yeah. Well, in an ideal world, yes.
Yeah.
Not unless you have the Spirit.
Yes.
Fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Indeed.
That was something that they got us to do at Arise, was they got us to read that but replace love with our own name and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, let
oh,
the
it
guilt
hits
settle
you
in.
so hard.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm so terrible.
No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. In the passage in Exodus, one thing I want to call out there, because a lot of people get really hung up on that, particularly the last part of that, right? Keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin. People are like, yeah, I'm with this. But then they go, by no means clearing the guilty. Okay, that's fair. They're guilty. Visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. How does, when the first time you read that, I don't know if you remember, but how did that hit you? Did that feel fair or just?
Oh, the third and fourth generation thing? No.
No? Yeah, no.
It didn't. And then I reasoned it out. Yeah.
How did you?
I compared it to the eternal generations.
Yeah,
But yeah.
the eternal as in in
No,
the verse before.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
At a cursory reading, though, it still seems unfair.
Yeah.
Because it's not
Yeah, exactly.
individualist like our society would like it to be.
Yep. But they were speaking into a society that was much more collectivist than we are now. So they wouldn't have felt when this was authored, they wouldn't have felt like, oh, this is not just.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, that family is unjust, and it's going generation to generation. But this is us reading with 20-25 eyes and seeing it through that lens, through the lens of what's actually here. And look what you were pointing out, Kristen, that the verse 7, keeping mercy for thousands. In the English, it's not directly stated, but it's implicit in the way the text is written, that the thousands that it's referring to is that God's mercy extends for thousands of generations. And what it's actually doing is contrasting it against the fact that the evil, or the judgment will only last for a few. And so the point here is not, well, these kids are going to suffer because of their parents and suffer because of their parents. The point is, wow, God's mercy is thousands of generations, but the punishment is very minor. It's very small in comparison. That's the point that's being made. But we read it with our modern lenses and go, this is terrible.
Yeah. And I believe they've done studies and actually tracked things like alcoholism and and they've found that after 4 generations, so it's God almost with things like that,
Science.
God isn't visiting the punishment upon the people. He's saying, when you choose your own way, there are consequences. But because I am God, they are limited. As in,
That's a good articulation.
Because you stuff up,
Yep.
the next 10 generations aren't stuffed. Like the next 3 or 4 have this tendency that can be overcome. But beyond that, they can overcome it
Yeah.
by that point.
That's love.
So,
Yeah.
and as much as we're trying to, right now, the conversations that we're having, we're bringing a level of explanation to these problematic passages. What about the ones that you haven't sorted out? Because I mean, I don't know about you, but I haven't sorted out in my head every single text in the whole Bible.
Yeah.
When God is apparently doing something that we can't justify as easily as we would like to, what do you do with that?
Research.
Or do you have none? Or are you just like
I don't
totally
know that I'm
comfortable?
there. Yeah,
Yeah?
I'm cool with him.
Yeah.
I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah? Yeah.
Because you can't really like read it in isolation. You still remember who he is in the rest of the passages that you've read.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't negate everything. Like it won't make sense, but I've come to terms that not everything will make sense.
Yeah. I think before Christ's death and resurrection, a lot of stuff didn't make sense for God's people. Like we've got it really easy after that. Like we have just like we got, oh, what's love look like? That. Like that's what love looks like.
Yeah.
You know? And up until then there were just types.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I love that answer of, you have to think about it in the greater context of Scripture. What has God demonstrated himself to be everywhere else? And if I'm struggling with this one thing and he is good in every other case, then is the likely answer that he's still good here the most likely response?
No, I love it because that applies so very well to our experiences too. Because we're like, he's showed up for us in all of like personal history and like other people's history, and then you hit a hard place and you're like, dang it, like this doesn't feel like love, God. Then you can turn your minds back and recognize, hey, he showed up for me this way and this way, so he is love. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Sometimes if God wants you to look to him, he'll take you to rock bottom so that the only place you can look is up. You know?
It hurts though.
Yeah.
Yes. Accurate. So what... Oh, sorry.
But then you look up and it doesn't hurt anymore. You know?
Yeah.
And he knows that.
Yeah. So I asked this question sort of in passing before. We didn't settle on it. So I want to come back to it.
Yeah.
What do you think love looks like in action? Is it just treating others well, or like how do you articulate that better? What does love look like? I don't just mean the feeling, I mean the action of love. What does that look like?
Selflessness. Like if I had to pick a synonym for love, that wasn't like
Yeah.
love. Selfless. Yeah. I'm trying to think of how to expand on
Charity.
that. Charity. Yeah. Okay.
Charity.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking how about like that's the synonym for love in like different translations.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, in King James Version,
Yeah,
love
yeah.
is substituted with charity a lot.
Of all these things,
Okay.
put on
Yeah.
charity. Yeah. Bond of perfectness.
Mhm.
But yeah. What does it look like? Yeah.
I would say, yes, selflessness. Is selflessness measured by its effect? Is selflessness measured by your desires and negating your own desires? Or is it measured by the benefit that others experience? Like, how do you define what selflessness is?
First one.
By negating
one?
your own
I
desires.
wasn't listening close enough.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Woo.
I said, how do you define, if selflessness is
Yeah.
an appropriate synonym, then is that defined by just doing things that don't put yourself first, or is it defined by the effect that your actions have on others?
We can have enormous good on other people and not be being selfless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I
But you
don't know if it's
could-
Jesus or Paul, but no love or no greater love has man than this, he laid down his life for his friend.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
The interesting thing is that I was thinking about it in the reverse, and it works both ways, because there are some people that can put themselves out and act in a way that's not in their best interest, but it's also not necessarily in the best interest of others, right?
Yeah.
Like they're sacrificing themselves for no good
That's
reason.
martyrdom. That's not.
That's martyrdom. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
and
not-
I mean that in the negative
Yeah,
sense, right?
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I guess...
Oh, look at me.
Yeah.
That's not being selfless.
They're doing it for the
let's just
likes.
go, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look how good I am.
Yeah.
Do it for the views.
He's the loud Pharisee. That's all they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that is I've been in those shoes, you know, in one time or another in my life where it's kind of like it's easier for me to, like, in my own mind, be the good guy and be self-sacrificial when loving the other person would have actually meant doing what was best for me. And like I get that. You get what I mean? Like, yeah. And I think that it's a complicated issue, and I think it becomes more evident the more the more people you're responsible for, I think. Because when I never thought about this at all until I didn't really even think about it when I was married. I didn't really think about it much until after I had kids. But I just sort of realized that if I am not, like as an example, me being fit and healthy is beneficial to my kids. And so until I had kids, I really didn't look after my health very much because I didn't have a reason to. Like I was still young and all the rest of it. But then once I had kids, and then I got to the place where I'm like, well, hey, if I'm, and that might take time away from playing with them. So sometimes that might mean that I'm either getting rest or I'm exercising, and I don't do a lot of either of those things. But sometimes that means I'm not being a good dad in the moment. For whatever that might look like, and it's just because I'm trying to be a balanced human being and teach them to be balanced human beings as they grow up.
Yeah.
And so in a way, it's me doing something for myself, but it's actually loving towards them. And so I know that's not the way every circumstance looks. It's probably not even the majority of circumstances. But I think a helpful way of looking at love is it is doing what is in the best interest of the other person, regardless of their emotional state. So they may not like you for what you've done, but you're doing what is best for them. And I think that's the way God relates to us. Was what we were saying before. Like, we don't have full perspective. We don't know what God is doing, but what we do know is that He's doing what's best. And so we can afford to have trust in that. And I know there have been some circumstances, even with friends, but so I mean, it's easy to point it out with kids, but I mean, even with my friends, there have been times where I've had to have a difficult conversation with that person because I loved them, not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I cared about them deeply and wanted them to thrive or grow or, whatever it is. There's the number of different ways that could be cut. But yeah, I guess the reason I went down this rabbit hole is what I wanted to say is, loving someone doesn't always mean making them happy.
Love isn't always well received.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Look
Jesus
at
says,
Jesus.
as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
he puts rebuke.
And there are people that use that wrong too.
He takes chastening and makes it like its own love language. Like, I love you, and the way I show you that I love you is by telling you when you're doing something harmful to yourself.
Yeah. Exactly. Sorry, I felt like that was a really long roundabout way to get to my point, but
No, appreciate it. Where are we taking this now?
yeah, where are we taking it?
Since we're at a lost end, I had a few thoughts.
Ooh,
Yeah.
let's go.
Just around fruits, but just because we're kind of doing an intro, so before we get too deep into the rest of them,
Nice.
and it gets too late to come back. So I got a couple of verses, Matthew 7:16 and 17. You will know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. So Jesus started it off. Paul and we're about to see, James just ran with it. I'm so glad I had things I could just stick in my Bible.
I saw you grabbing pens and all sorts.
I'm like, Luke's fine. I was running out of
I
stuff.
didn't even realize you took my time.
It's in Exodus 34. We're going back there. We're going back there.
Exodus 34.
Another one which I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. James, where he says, where did it go? Here we go. You have faith and I have works.
What verse?
Oh, sorry. James,
chapter.
the Bible doesn't have verses. What are you talking about now?
It wasn't written that way.
The verses were added later.
James chapter 2, verse 18 and following. Oh, anyway, somewhere in there you'll find it. Just read the whole chapter. Where was I? All right. Yeah, so verse 18. But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. So this is the whole, saved by grace, saved by faith, you know. Oh, yeah, sorry, two different things. Same, but different.
No, I get it.
Great. Anyway. Maybe think about that. But the reason why I was thinking about all this is because we often pick out verse 22 and 23 of Galatians 5 and neglect Paul's little prelude to that. Starting verse 16, walk in the Spirit and you will not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary to one another. So I'll hit pause here. Exodus 34.
Taking us on a Bible study.
That was awesome.
Luke read...
Ever since I'm Hebrew.
I listened to a great sermon series on Exodus 34 because this is the most quoted passage in the Bible by the Bible because this is God's revelation of himself. But if we read a little bit later on, so Luke did a great job covering God's characteristics. And in verse 14, we see another name that God gives himself. For you shall worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Now, we usually, jealousy has quite negative connotations, especially like we were saying at the beginning of the session, that language often lets us down with meaning. But what do you guys think? What do you think God's saying when he calls himself jealous?
I've heard that.
Well, the very next verse is talking about lest you go into another land and you make a covenant with the people of that land and you play the harlot with the gods of that land.
Yeah.
And so he's comparing. It's like the Hosea story where he compares his relationship with his people to a marriage, where he's married a promiscuous woman, basically, who keeps letting him down. But he continues to love her.
Yeah.
And so if you're married and your significant other is going out and playing the harlot with other people, are you going to be jealous? Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And should you be jealous? Yes,
Yeah.
that is the right emotion to have.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've heard envy and jealousy separated. Envy is wanting something you don't have. Jealousy is fire over something that you do own. And that's why, because God owns his people and he has love for his people. And when they go away, obviously his jealousy burns.
I would say a good word to insert in here is protection.
Yeah.
Protective.
Yeah, appropriate jealousy, in God's form. He is, yes, it is rightfully so because they are his people, but he wants to protect them from what happens.
Yeah.
If they do break covenant with him.
Yeah,
right?
he's not jealous in the sense that, oh no, they're worshipping a stick. Yeah. Because God's like, no, you're just an idiot.
Yeah. I made the stick.
Yeah. He's jealous in the sense that he knows what your potential is, and he's jealous for you to fulfill that potential. And when he sees you worshipping a stick, he goes, "No, you gumnut! What are you doing? That's not the intention I have for you."
SRV. Steve Revised version.
Version.
No, you gumnut.
No.
Don't worship the gumnut, you gumnut.
Yeah, it's the Australian.
Yeah,
the Australian Revised version. Yeah. Anyway, so that gets us to 3:17. And then again, as Luke was mentioning earlier, Galatians is very much about Paul saying, the law is a good thing, but that's not what saves us. So, but if you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. And we get another list that we don't focus on a whole lot. But now the works of the flesh are evident: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, and it goes on. It's twice as long as the fruit of the Spirit list.
Yeah.
But all of those things.
So, in other words, it's the fruit of the Spirit's a lot easier than the lust of the flesh.
Well, it's a lot more appealing.
Yeah.
I think what.
But how much of that list do we, as a society, consider as actually love?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point too.
That is a good point. Read it again.
Yeah, now we've got that lens to look through.
Yeah.
I'll
like it,
finish.
I like
I'll
it.
finish it, and then
finish
you might
your thought.
revise the idea. But yeah, the first few I definitely agree though. So adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, dissensions, heresies. Love heresies in there. Envy, murders, drunkenness, revelries, and the like. So he's like,
And the
just
like.
Yeah, not just all of these.
There's
but
more,
everything like them.
Etc.
yeah, etc., etc. But he's juxtaposing the two ideas. He's saying there's the spirit and there's the flesh, and they're fighting against each other. God's jealous for you. You'll be known by your fruits
Yep.
or your works, as James says. This is what you can be known for, and we all no one strives for these things. Like no one wakes up in the morning and goes, I feel me some envy today. Let's go and destroy my soul by wanting what everyone else has got and being angry that everyone's in a better situation than me, or it's just anyway. But then we get to the bunch of wombats.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to finish it saying, those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. Or, phrased slightly differently, will not meet the potential that God has planned for them. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And those who are Christ's have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Yeah. I don't know. I just
That's a good point to make.
Yeah, put some pieces together.
He starts with the list of bad things, and then he gives you the list of good things.
Yeah.
So
What do you want to be known for?
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting because we started out with me saying that love is the alpha fruit, right? It's the one that
Alpha.
I like
they
that.
all fall
Alpha
inside
fruit.
of, and then he's got the list of the lusts of the flesh, and what's the alpha
Anti-love.
sin
Yeah.
that all of the other sins fall into?
Pride,
It's
selfishness.
pride.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So people, would it be fair to say that
antidote to
people
it.
think
Yeah.
that hatred's the opposite of love, but would it be fair to say that no, actually pride is the opposite of love?
I would 100%
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah.
I think
'Cause
that's
it is.
much more biblical.
People go, the opposite of love is hatred. No. It's the opposite of love is definitely pride, and it's always been pride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because love, by definition, is other-centeredness.
That's right.
And pride, by definition, is
It's
self-centeredness. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, Satan pulled a fast one with that. Hey, because love and hate is that's the dichotomy that is always set up.
Mhm.
Always.
And it's wrong.
That's wrong.
It's
You're right.
completely wrong.
Never thought about it
It's actually
before.
really wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it is. Not that hate's good, but hate is just a chink. It's just a small
It's just
facet.
a small little thing.
Yeah, it's just a small part of that pride.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a byproduct of it.
Yeah,
It's like,
byproduct.
I hate you because
Yeah.
you offended me, but
Yes.
I hate you, and that's
Yeah.
the opposite. Not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hate. And if we use Jesus' definition in the Sermon on the Mount, hate is akin to or connected with murder, right? But it's not the root problem. Whereas love is the root fruit, the root of the fruit, so to speak. Pride is the opposite. I love it.
It's the alpha
Great.
sin.
It's the alpha sin.
Yep.
Yep.
So
I
love
feel
is
like
the
that's a
alpha
whole sermon
fruit.
just waiting to happen. Have you preached on that?
No.
Yeah. Maybe you should.
Maybe.
Yeah. Let's see if I beat you to it.
Well, the sermon that I preached at Reconnect 2 weeks ago
Yeah,
That long?
was I titled it "What Love Looks Like,"
Yeah, that's true,
and
that's
I
true.
preached it on the story of Mephibosheth.
Bishop.
Yeah.
And the reason I called it "What Love Looks Like" is because of the way that David treated Mephibosheth is a type of the way that Christ treats us. In that he didn't deserve any of the kindness that David showed him. In fact, by all rights, David should have gone in and killed him. But David said, no, I'm going to show you kindness for the sake of your father and your grandfather, who was my mortal enemy. Right? And I think it's a really great story. I'm going to preach it again this weekend at Push Church.
No, no.
That's a good story.
So if anyone wants to come, Bush Church is on this weekend.
Ooh, I did.
Quick little plug.
Yeah.
Tagigi.
Tagigi Hall,
Yeah.
Avondale. Yep.
Yeah. So all of you people who are listening internationally, please fly over.
You've
Buy your
got
tickets
a day to
now.
book flights.
Don't even buy tickets. Just go to the airport. No,
Hijack
no
the plane.
don't do that. You will be sorely disappointed.
Well, before,
But if you're local,
yes.
definitely come along.
Yeah. Well, it's great that we can do that now that we're releasing, we're recording and releasing
Yes.
at,
Yeah.
at the same
At
time.
the same time. It's
So
good.
we can actually do that now. Whereas in the past, it'd be like, I have no idea when this is going out. So never say anything that dates it. So
Yeah.
right. So just before we wrap up, is there anything else that we want to say? I feel like those last points that were just made about love versus pride and the character of God, and like I just feel like this was a really well-rounded discussion. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add before we wrap it? I think we hit it. Yeah.
Yeah, like to tie it up, like it's the fruit of the Spirit. God is love.
Yep.
And to have the Spirit in us, we have like that piece of God inside us.
Mhm.
And only let that bloom and we cherish it and we nourish it. It becomes things like patient and kind. I don't know. You notice in people, like when they've got the Spirit in them, there are all those things just naturally. It's beautiful.
Yeah. indeed.
How do you get the Spirit?
Pardon?
How do you get the Spirit in
How
you?
do you get this? Yeah, you pray for him.
Ask for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
pretty simple.
Jesus gave him to us. Comforter, Spirit of truth, etc.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, we're going to leave that there. Thank you guys for joining us for another episode. And this is the beginning of a new series. So if you've enjoyed this one, please stick with us for the next episode. We'll be coming
What's next episode?
Joy.
Joy.
Joy. Oh,
Joy.
I've got some things to say about joy. All right, cool. This is good.
he's ready now. We could do a double right now. Cool. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you guys for joining us. Please share this with a friend, and we will see you guys next week. God bless.
Bye.